By the final page, his eyes narrowed, his fingers tracing Ethan's neat notations. "This is unconventional," he said, his voice losing its edge. "Your approach to the last problem is strategic, almost tactical." Ethan nodded. "In combat, you don't always have perfect information. You adapt, prioritize, and make decisions with what you've got. That's how I approached your puzzle." Thornton hesitated, unused to being challenged in his own domain. He held up the paper. "Class, let's examine this final solution. It's a logic problem, but Sergeant Caldwell's treated it like a military operation." "Excuse me, Professor," Sarah interrupted, her hand half raised. "I think his answer's right. I checked it twice, and it works. It's just different." Thornton's jaw tightened. But before he could respond, another student, a quiet boy named Jake, spoke up. "Yeah, it's like game theory. We learned that in math club. It's the same idea, just applied differently." The class buzzed, students leaning forward, their earlier discomfort replaced by curiosity. Noah sat up straighter, his eyes locked on his dad. Thornton set the paper down, buying time. "Well, this is certainly instructive, but let's not confuse tactical thinking with the kind of innovation universities foster." Ethan stood, his uniform crisp, his voice calm but firm. "Professor, you asked earlier what value the tomb guard brings. Mind if I answer that now?" Thornton nodded, caught off guard. "Go ahead, Sergeant." Ethan turned to the class, his gaze steady, addressing them as if they were his squad. "The tomb guard isn't just about marching or standing still," Ethan began. "We're active duty soldiers, many with combat experience. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan, led a tactical unit, and helped plan operations with allies. I've got a bachelor's in history from George Mason and a master's in strategic studies from the Army War College. The uniform I wear isn't a costume. It's a symbol of the sacrifices made by men and women who never came home." He paused, letting the words sink in. Standing guard at the tomb isn't about blind obedience. It's about discipline, focus, and a commitment to something bigger than yourself. The same qualities that drive good scholarship, good leadership, or good citizenship. We don't guard the tomb to glorify war. We do it to honor the cost of freedom, a freedom that lets you, Professor, teach your students to question everything. The room was silent, every student captivated. Thornton opened his mouth, then closed it, his academic armor cracking. Noah's eyes shone with something new, pride. Ethan continued, his voice softer now. "You said universities produce thinkers and leaders, while traditions like mine are outdated. But that's a false choice. The best leaders I've known were scholars too, men and women who studied history, strategy, and ethics, then applied it under fire. Tradition doesn't hold us back, it grounds us, reminds us why we fight, why we learn, why we keep going." He picked up his kepi, hat, adjusting it with care. "Professor, you teach these kids to question. That's good, but questioning is only half the job. Understanding is the other half, and understanding means seeing the value in different kinds of service, whether it's in a classroom or on a battlefield." Ethan turned to Noah. "I've got to get to Arlington. You okay here?" Noah nodded, his voice steady. "Yeah, Dad, I'm good." Ethan gave a formal nod to the class. "Thank you for the opportunity, Professor. I hope it was educational." He walked out, his steps echoing in the hallway, leaving a stunned silence behind. Thornton cleared his throat, struggling to regain control. "Well, that was unexpected. Let's return to our discussion." But Sarah raised her hand. "Can we keep his diagram on the board? I want to copy it for my math project." Thornton paused, then nodded. "Fine, it's worth studying." As the class resumed, no one noticed a shift. Kids who never spoke up were asking questions, engaging with the material in new ways. Even Thornton seems different, less theatrical, more thoughtful. At the end of the session, he approached Noah's desk. "Your dad," he said quietly, "has he published any of his strategic work?" Noah straightened. "Yeah, his thesis on counterinsurgency tactics was cited by the Pentagon a couple years back." Thornton nodded, glancing at the door Ethan had exited. "Interesting. Maybe we'll invite him back for a proper talk." Noah smiled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He'd be honored, sir. A week later, under a blazing Arlington sunset, Ethan stood guard at the tomb, his silhouette sharp against the orange sky. The marble gleamed, the headstones stretched endlessly around him, each one a story of sacrifice. Noah had visited that morning, apologizing for doubting his dad and asking about the tomb guard's history. Ethan had smiled, promising to teach him everything. That evening, an email arrived from Thornton. It was brief but sincere, thanking Ethan for his perspective and mentioning the loss of his brother in Iraq, a wound that had shaped his views. Ethan read it, understanding the man behind the bluster. He typed a short reply, inviting Thornton to visit Arlington someday. As Ethan paced his 21 steps, the rhythm of his boots a heartbeat in the quiet, he felt a peace he hadn't known in months. To the tourists snapping photos, he was a stoic figure, a symbol frozen in time. But to those who'd seen him in that classroom, Noah, Sarah, even Thornton, he was something more, a man who stood for honor not just in silence, but in action. So, what do you think about honor? Have you ever judged someone by their job or their uniform, only to learn you were wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about duty, respect, and the moments that change us. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload, and check out our other videos on screen now. True intelligence isn't measured by degrees or titles, but by the wisdom to see value in every kind of service. This is Honor Under Moonlight, and we'll see you next time. In the dead of night at Arlington, a tomb guard paces his 21 steps, boots echoing like a heartbeat against sacred stone. Sergeant Ethan Caldwell, rigid in his Navy uniform, looks like a statue to the tourists snapping photos. But tonight, a challenge looms, one that'll test more than his discipline. A professor armed with a PhD and a grudge calls the tomb guard a pointless relic, mocking Ethan's duty in front of his own son. The classroom's about to become a battlefield, and Ethan's about to prove that honor isn't just in the steps he takes, it's in the fight he's ready to win. Before we dive into the story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon when Sergeant Ethan Caldwell stepped onto the polished marble of Arlington National Cemetery. His Navy tomb guard uniform was pressed to perfection. His kepi hat sat at a precise angle, and his sunglasses shielded eyes that had seen both war and peace. Each step echoed in the pre-dawn silence, a rhythmic tap against the sacred ground where thousands of white headstones stood like silent sentinels. Ethan's gloved hands swung in measured arcs, his posture rigid yet fluid, embodying the discipline of a tomb guard. This was his duty, to honor the fallen at the tomb of the unknown soldier, a monument to sacrifice that demanded nothing less than perfection. As he paced his 21 steps, Ethan's mind drifted to his son, Noah, 14 and struggling to find his place in a world that often mocked what Ethan stood for. Noah had been distant lately, embarrassed by his dad's job, swayed by voices that called the tomb guard a relic of a bygone era. Ethan exhaled softly, his breath visible in the chilly air. He'd faced insurgents in Afghanistan, but nothing felt harder than watching his son pull away. Back home, the kitchen clock read 5:30 a.m. Ethan, now in civilian clothes, called upstairs. "Noah, time to get up. We've got that history program today." A groan drifted down, followed by sluggish footsteps. Noah appeared, hair tousled, wearing a hoodie and jeans, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad, do I have to go? Professor Thornton's just going to rant about how the military is a waste of time again." Ethan set down his coffee mug, his hazel eyes meeting Noah's. "He's your teacher, Noah. You don't have to agree with him, but you've got to show up and think for yourself." Noah shrugged, picking at his cereal. "He says stuff like the tomb guard's just a bunch of guys marching for tourists. It's embarrassing, Dad." The words stung, but Ethan kept his voice steady. "My job's about honoring the people who gave everything for this country. That's not embarrassing, it's a privilege." Noah looked away, unconvinced. Ethan checked his watch. Come on, I'll drive you. And yeah, I'm wearing my uniform. Got duty right after. Noah's eyes widened. You're not coming inside, are you? Ethan raised an eyebrow, his silence answering the question. The drive to the Washington, D.C. Community Center was quiet, the city waking up around them. Ethan navigated the streets with the precision he brought to everything, his tomb guard uniform drawing glances from passers-by. Noah slouched in the passenger seat, staring out the window. So this Professor Thornton, Ethan said, breaking the silence, he's got a thing against the military, huh? Noah nodded. He says traditions like yours are outdated, that they glorify war. He told the class last week that tomb guards are just puppets in fancy costumes. Ethan's grip tightened on the steering wheel, but his voice stayed calm. And what do you think, Noah? I don't know, Noah mumbled. I mean, he's a professor. He's got a PhD. Everyone listens to him. Ethan glanced at his son. A degree doesn't mean someone's got all the answers. You've got to weigh both sides. Noah didn't respond, and Ethan let it go as they pulled into the community center's parking lot. The center was a modern building with glass windows and a sign advertising the Youth History Enrichment Program. Inside, the classroom buzzed with 30 middle schoolers, their voices echoing off the walls. Professor Daniel Thornton stood at the front, a tall man of 45 with salt and pepper hair and a tweed blazer that screamed academia. His wire-rimmed glasses glinted as he wrote on the whiteboard, "The Cost of Tradition." Ethan and Noah slipped in just as Thornton began. "Good morning, everyone," Thornton said, his voice carrying a practiced authority. Today we're discussing how outdated traditions like certain military rituals drain resources from a society that needs innovation, not pageantry. He paused, noticing Ethan's uniform. Well, what do we have here? A living exhibit, perhaps? Sergeant, is it? Care to introduce yourself? Ethan stepped forward, his posture perfect. Sergeant Ethan Caldwell, Tomb Guard, Arlington National Cemetery. I'm just here to drop off my son, Noah. I apologize for interrupting. Thornton's smile was thin, his eyes gleaming with something like amusement. No interruption at all, Sergeant. In fact, your timing is perfect. We're just about to dissect the relevance of roles like yours. Please, take a seat. Noah slid into a chair, his face burning red as classmates whispered. Ethan hesitated, then sat near the door, his kepi hat resting on his knee. Thornton leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Class, let's consider the Tomb Guard, a group of soldiers who march back and forth day and night for what? To guard a symbolic grave? To entertain tourists? It's a beautiful spectacle, sure, but utterly impractical in a world that values progress over nostalgia. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his discipline holding firm. Thornton continued, his tone dripping with condescension. These traditions perpetuate a myth of military glory, distracting us from the real costs of war. Wouldn't you agree, Sergeant, that your time could be better spent on something productive? Ethan spoke evenly, his voice cutting through the room. With respect, Professor, the Tomb Guard honors the soldiers who gave their lives, including those whose names we'll never know. That's not a myth, it's a debt we owe. Thornton waved a hand dismissively. Charming, but let's be honest, standing motionless for hours doesn't exactly require intellectual rigor, does it? It's more about following orders and thinking. The class grew quiet, sensing the tension. Noah sank lower in his seat, mortified. Thornton seized the moment, his voice sharpening. Since you're here, Sergeant, why don't we make this educational? I've developed a cognitive assessment for my research, logic puzzles, pattern recognition, creative problem solving. Care to demonstrate the intellectual demands of your profession? Ethan glanced at Noah, seeing the fear in his eyes. He knew Thornton was baiting him, but he also saw a chance to show Noah what he stood for. I've got duty soon, Professor, but I can spare a few minutes if it'll help your students learn. Thornton's eyebrows raised, cheerily surprised. Excellent. Let's see what a military mind can do with a real challenge. He passed out sheets of paper, each filled with complex puzzles. Students, you can try these yourselves, but I want you to observe our guest's approach. Notice how hierarchical training might limit creative thinking. Ethan took a sheet, his gloved hands steady. He picked up a pencil and began, his focus absolute, as if he were back in Afghanistan scanning for threats. The room fell silent, save for the scratch of pencils. Thornton paced, occasionally glancing over Ethan's shoulder, his confidence unshaken. "Interesting choice," he murmured after a few minutes. Ethan didn't respond, his pencil moving with the same precision he used in his ceremonial steps. Noah watched, his anxiety mounting. He'd seen his dad train for hours, memorize every detail of his uniform, but this was different. Thornton's voice broke the silence. "Notice how our guest works sequentially, step by step, very linear, typical of military training where orders trump innovation." 5 minutes passed, then 10. Thornton's smugness began to falter as Ethan's pencil kept moving, solving problems that stumped even the brightest students. A girl in the front row, Sarah Newen, whispered to her friend, "I think he's actually getting these." Thornton shot her a look, but she didn't back down. With 2 minutes left, Thornton cleared his throat. "Sergeant, the final problem's a lateral thinking challenge. It stumped graduate students, so don't feel bad if you—" "I'm done," Ethan said quietly, setting down his pencil. He straightened the paper and handed it to Thornton. The professor blinked, caught off guard, then took the sheet with a forced smile. "Let's see what we've got," Thornton said, scanning the first page. His neutrality wavered as he flipped to the second, then the third.